Hello and welcome back to Boring Dad Gaming, where today we're going to be playing some more Tyrion Cuthbert, Attorney of the Arcane. So, Prosecutor Steelwind, having been stabbed and wounded in episode 4, is now under arrest under suspicion of murder. So, things are certainly going an interesting way for her. But we're going to head into our investigation phase now. I doubt there's probably... Yeah, so nothing much to do there. Let's just really examine this room. You know, stuff's occurred in here since we were last in here. Stained glass window. Small ray of sunshine is shining through it. Pardon me. Had a big glug of coffee, so a bit of a hiccup. There are rows upon rows of seats for worshippers to sit at full capacity, blah, blah, blah. I think we've had that before, but let's just do another detect magic.
Arcane.
Nothing here. So let's safely move on to... let's go to the prayer room. That's the scene of the crime. Or one of the crimes. Multiple homicides here, remember. You arrive at the prayer room. It's now swarming with knights from the Inquisition. You find yourself staring at the chalk outline where Pierce's body once was. You can't help but feel a little uneasy. You've been to plenty of crime scenes before, but even if you were unconscious, you were here when the murder happened. It's a little unnerving knowing how close you came to death.
Are you okay?
Yeah. But now's not the time for an existential crisis. Steelwind's future counts on you figuring out what happened. You still don't know what happened after you fell unconscious. The Inquisition believes that Steelwind broke into this room, knocked you and Pierce out, and then killed him. But you remember it clearly. You saw Beatrice before you lost consciousness. There's more at play here than you realise. Celeste also fought Steelwind after Beatrice knocked you out. Perhaps she can tell you more about how she was acting. Yeah, we'll start with that. Let's review what happened. Before Beatrice knocked me out, we heard a commotion outside and you went to investigate. Can you tell me more about your fight with Steelwind? What was she like?
Well, she wasn't her usual self. It's like she was in some kind of daze. I noticed it even before she attacked me. Something was wrong with her.
Oh yeah,
and she didn't even respond to me when I tried to talk to her. It's like she didn't even recognize me.
But from what Lord Asclepius said, she would have been acting more erratically if she was affected by mage blight. It's possible that you fought someone disguised as her.
I guess that's possible. But whoever they were, their magic was extremely powerful.
And several members of the Four Pillar families were assembled here. It could have been one of them. We should speak with Commander White when we get the chance. The Grand Cathedral was closed from the public for whatever was happening here. They probably have a list of everyone who was present when the murders happened. This means that whoever did this was one of the nobles that was here today. Beatrice can cast invisibility, so I doubt she'd let you see her. But did you see her at any point when you were fighting Steelwind? Celeste?
Sorry, I don't know. I was too focused on staying alive.
I've actually been meaning to ask you about that. Aren't you really strong? I've never even seen you break a sweat in a fight before.
Well, she was really tough. It was terrifying, honestly. It was mainly her magic. I've never fought someone with spells that powerful before.
She didn't hurt you, did she?
No, but I got pretty close. I think she realized that she couldn't beat me, so she just ran past me and into the prayer room.
So her real target was Pierce. But why? Did you see the moment she murdered Pierce?
No, when I arrived at the prayer room I saw you and Steelwind unconscious on the ground. And Pierce was already dead.
And I'm assuming you didn't see Beatrice anywhere.
No, she wasn't there when I arrived.
How did she leave the prayer room without Celeste noticing? Did she turn herself invisible? Okay, so we won't read that yet, but we've got her testimony there. We showed up at the prayer room for the meeting at 1:50. Then we interrogated Pierce for about half an hour, and that's when we heard that commotion outside, and you went to investigate.
Right.
And I think Beatrice knocked me and Pierce out 10 minutes after that. How long did you fight Steelwind before she pushed past you?
Oh, we definitely fought for a while. It must have been at least 20 minutes.
So we're up to 2:40 p.m. at this point then.
After that, she gave up on fighting me and ran into the prayer room.
Which means that Beatrice somehow got into the room during your fight. That discounts my theory of her disguising herself as Steelwind. You regained consciousness at 3:12 p.m. That means you were knocked out for more than 40 minutes. There are still a lot of unknowns about what happened. You'll need all the pieces if you want to put this puzzle together. Okay, so let's do detect magic first. Oh, okay, there's a little bit to unpack. What's this?
There are traces of conjuration magic all over the room.
Well, that must have been left by Beatrice's sleep spell. Okay, what about the purple patch?
There's a trace of necromancy on the ground here. It's probably from when I tried to heal you.
what's this?
Oh, there's a trace of transmutation here. It's all over the area around his body.
Interesting. Did the murderer wound him using a transmutation spell? Alright. Well, got that. Let's examine it normally. There are 3 stained glass windows. They look quite nice. Okay, so that counts for all of those. There are lanterns hanging around the room. They're still lit. Okay. I'll do the body last. I just want to see if there's anything else here of interest. Yeah. There's the chalk outline where Pierce's body probably was. It looks like he was sitting against the altar when he died. And the bloodstain seems to imply that the fatal wound came from his chest. An autopsy report would be really helpful here. You should ask the commander for a copy of it the next time you see him. Okay, let's head out of there. Anyway, look like you found everything you can here. You should move on and take a closer look. Yeah. So, we'll go first then... Oh, hello. Yikes. Well, let's start at the common room, huh? You retrace your footsteps and find the common room. This was the last place you saw Von Sanctus and Sybil before everything happened. You look around and see that most of the room has been entirely scorched. You can still smell the scent of burning cloth and flesh in the air. What happened here?
Was there some kind of fire?
Yeah, well, we think the perp lit a fire using magic. As you enter the room, Commander White approaches you. He seems to be accompanied by the typical legion of knights. Commander White. Hey, kid. You investigating what happened too? Yeah, something like that. We just want to figure out what really happened. Yeah, well, you and me both. Nothing about this case makes any damn sense. I'll be honest, I could really use your help in trying to figure this out. Honestly, you're not sure who you can trust at this point, but the commander is leading the investigation, and he's bound to have information that will be useful to you. Alright, let's talk. Oh, this whole situation is a damn mess. Has the Inquisition found any clues to explain what happened? We only have the basic stuff so far, and we've only just received the autopsy reports. That's still pretty useful. Do you have copies of them? Yeah, sure, knock yourselves out. Okay, let's work through these. So Garrett Pierce died at 2:45 p.m, so that was 5 minutes after that fight with Celeste should have ended. Cause of death was blood loss. A shard of frozen liquid was stabbed through his heart. It is very likely that this was the murder weapon. Well, that's so as we know, he killed Celeste's father through the same means, so it could be trying to set Celeste up again. The wound also shows heavy traces of transmutation magic, and traces of conjuration magic were found throughout the room. Okay. Coraline Sybil died at 2:18 p.m. So this was while we were still talking to Garrick. Cause of death was suffocation. Her body was found floating in a nearby lake outside of the Grand Cathedral. Traces of transmutation, evocation, and necromancy magic were found on the body. And then we've got Lloyd Von Sanctus, died at 2:05 p.m. So he was the first to die. And that was... yeah, so we were still mid-conversation with Garrick while this was happening. The cause of death was suffocation. The fire in the common room burnt the body too much to discern any specific wounds he might have suffered. However, a small trace of evocation magic and a burn mark were found on the victim's left shoulder. This implies the body was hit with a fire-based evocation spell. Traces of abjuration magic were found on and around the body. Huh. Wait, Pierce was killed with a frozen blade? Isn't that similar to how he killed Flintheart? Sorry, I didn't mean to...
No, it's okay.
Still strange though, why would the murderer kill Pierce using such a convoluted method? If Steelwind really was affected by mage blight, she wouldn't have done something like that. So nothing new there. Anyway, the times of death also seem to tell a story. If we look at the reports, the murderer must have killed Von Sanctus, then Sybil, then Pierce, in that order. Yeah, that's our working theory too. If we look at this map, we can see where the prayer room and the common room are. Lady Sybil's body was found in the lake west of here. But since the Grand Cathedral was built on a cliff, there isn't an easy way to get there in such a short amount of time. Maybe she was just thrown off. The balcony, huh? So that raises my next question. How did Sybil's body end up in the lake? It was thrown off the balcony. Sybil... The murderer threw Sybil from the balcony. The Grand Cathedral was built on a cliff over the lake. And the westward balcony just happens to be right over it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. We even have a witness who saw Steelwind there.
Really? Who was it?
It was High Speaker Theonarchius.
High Speaker?
He's the shot caller of the Church of Bahamut. And he stands at the top of the religious hierarchy from what I hear. He spotted Steelwind near the west balcony and noticed that she was acting suspiciously. He called out to her, but she ignored him.
So she knew that he saw her, but she didn't attack him?
Yeah, he really lucked out.
But if she was having a psychotic episode, he would have noticed that. From what you said, all she did was ignore him.
Oh, you're right. This whole Mage Blight story doesn't really add up.
Either way, we'll just have to talk to him directly to find out more. Putting that aside, there's something else that's strange. What's that? It's about the order that the murders occurred in. The murderer killed Von Sanctus, Sybil and Pierce. In that order. This means that the murderer went to the common room, then the west balcony, and then finally to the prayer room. But if we look at the map, the murderer's route seems a bit strange. Murderer purposely killed Sybil second, yeah? No. Okay, so it would have been helpful to have the map at that point. The murderer must have passed right by the prayer room before they dumped Sybil's body. Okay, yeah. Why wouldn't they just murder Pierce on the way there?
Maybe they wanted to dump Sybil's body first.
They were afraid of fighting me.
Aren't you giving yourself a little too much credit?
No, she has a point. Out of everyone who fought the murderer, Celeste was the only one who didn't die or fall comatose. Anyway, there has to be a reason why the murderer deliberately chose that route. So common room, balcony, prayer room. Okay, you've created a rough outline of the murderer's actions, but the real clues will lie in how each of the individual murders occurred. And that starts with figuring out how Von Sanctus was murdered. Have we done... Okay. How did the Inquisition find out about the murders anyway? Did a witness come across the bodies?
Oh, it all started when Prince Alaric ran up to us. He told us that he saw a fire breaking out in the common room. He also saw Steelwind there, but when he tried to talk to her, she hit him with some kind of spell.
She attacked one of the princes?
Yeah, but it didn't look like she hurt him. That guy from House Asclepius inspected him and he told us he wasn't injured.
I'm glad that he's okay, but wouldn't Arya have used a more violent spell if she was being affected by Mage Blight?
Well, it's possible she was throwing spells randomly and he just happened to get really lucky.
I suppose that's possible. But was there anyone else nearby when this happened? I would have expected a Prince of Wivengard to be under constant guard.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my mistake. I ordered the knights to give him some space, considering what just happened.
And that would be...
Sorry, kid, if you don't know, it's not my place to tell you. I have orders from the top to stay quiet about that.
Then it looks like you'll need to ask someone higher up. It's still strange, though. Why were all these nobles gathered here?
Anyway, whatever the perp hit him with, it only put him in a daze. He could barely walk or talk. He couldn't even approach us until the spell had worn off. The weirdest thing about it all is that he was pretty close to where we were. But for some reason we didn't find him until after the spell wore off.
That must have been traumatic. I hope he's okay. Why didn't anyone see him during this time?
After he told us about what was happening, we went to put out the fires. And that's where we saw a bunch of guards knocked out outside the prayer room.
Did you see me?
No, this all happened around 3:10 p.m.
Right, that was probably well after Steelwind moved on to the prayer room. Celeste must have already followed her into it. When you arrested Steelwind, I recall you mentioning that a bunch of guards were comatose. Did the murderer use some kind of spell to knock them out?
Well, I don't think so, and I'm just as lost as you are about that. Some of the victims didn't have any magical traces on them, so we know that they're not under the effects of a spell, but they still haven't woken up.
That's odd, to say the least. Is there any common thread between the knights who fell comatose? That might help us deduce what happened to them.
Well, we found all of them at the locations where Steelwind was spotted. That can't be a coincidence.
But he just admitted that they weren't being affected. Oh, pardon me. Oh, by any kind of spell. What's going on here? Okay. Okay, keep working down these. Commander White, you keep saying the perp instead of Steelwind. Even though everyone else seems to think she was responsible for this, do you also suspect that she's being framed?
Well, it just doesn't add up. If she did give herself mage blight, her actions wouldn't have been so deliberate. And she's definitely not the type of person to just go around murdering people.
Oh, that wasn't him.
And even if she was, she's led a lot of the Inquisition's investigations recently. She's investigated plenty of homicides with us, and she knows exactly how we do things. Whoever did this got the job done, but they were sloppy about it. A bunch of witnesses saw her, and she didn't even try to hide herself using her magic. So either she had mage blight, which doesn't match with her behaviour, or she did this intentionally and wanted to get caught. Neither scenario makes any damn sense.
Someone has to be framing her. That's the only reasonable explanation.
Honestly, I'm not so sure about that either.
What do you mean?
Well, you saw her when we arrested her, didn't you? She wanted us to lock her up. It's like she thought she was a danger to herself and others.
Right, that's the same impression I got as well.
If it weren't for the witnesses' statements, I'm be sure she gave herself mage blight. The strangest thing is that I've never seen her that scared before. Something really rattled her about what happened.
Did you follow up on what I said about Beatrice? I know she was in the room when Pierce and I fell unconscious. She has to be involved in this somehow.
Well, she's already in prison, so we're already ahead on that account. But when we asked her what happened, she said that she couldn't remember anything.
That's such an obvious lie. She has to be hiding something.
Well, normally I'd agree with you, but she's not the only one with missing memories. Steelwind also can't remember anything.
What? It looks like you have to speak with her about that. Anyway, what about Eris and that knight who was guarding her? Did they see anything?
Sorry, kid, but Eris Ilmater has been missing since everything went down.
What? Do you have any idea what happened to her?
No, but I wouldn't be too worried.
What? A witness to the crime is missing and possibly hurt?
Yeah, look, kid, you may be a hotshot attorney, but I've been in this business a lot longer than you have. Sometimes, when these things happen to civilians, they get spooked and run away. I've seen it a million times.
You feel like he's not making as big a deal of this as he should be. But he might have a point. Eris is the daughter of a crime lord, after all. She might have gone into hiding to avoid having to speak with law enforcement.
We don't have the resources to look for her, but I'm sure she'll turn up eventually.
Well, I suppose we can't do anything about that now. But I still hope she's okay. Anyway, what about the knight guarding Beatrice? Surely he didn't go missing as well.
Well, that's the thing. The knight who was supposed to be watching her is one of the people who went comatose. We found him in front of the prayer room too.
Damn it, what happened to him?
Make matters worse, that Frege chick knows how to cast invisibility. So even if she was telling the truth, very few people would have actually seen her.
But her guard was in front of the prayer room. She must have brought him there somehow. Okay. Anyways, would you happen to have a recent version of her spell compendium?
Sure, we already have it on record.
Okay, so she knows familial bonds, sleep, mend wounds, send message, animate corpse, necrotic blight, shatter, invisibility, feign death, could be an interesting one, and illusory disguise. Okay, we'll have to read about those. Oh god, we're going to work through all these. I'll just click through. We'll return to them as they seem like they might be relevant. We've seen a lot of these previously, but there's one or two that we haven't. So maybe I'll read those in a bit more detail. Shatter. So channels the caster's magic into any physical object they are touching with their hands. If enough magic is channeled, the object may shatter or break. The intensity of this spell will exponentially increase while they are concentrating. However, channeling larger quantities of magic will slowly drain the caster's stamina and possibly cause mage blight. No invisibility. Feign death. The caster must target a creature that's already unconscious. While they concentrate on this spell, the target will appear to be dead. The target creature will stop breathing and their heart will stop beating. However, the life energies of the spell will keep them alive for the duration. I wonder if any of the quote-unquote murder victims are under the effect of that spell. Illusory disguise we've seen before. Right, I forgot how many spells she knew how to cast. Alright, let's talk about the victims then. It's all a little difficult to take in, I still can't believe it. After everything he did, Von Sanctus was just murdered.
I'm surprised to hear that from you. didn't he basically get away with offing Justin Way? The way I see it, he got what he deserved.
Yeah, that still doesn't sit right with me. No matter who the victims might have been, no one deserves to die like that.
Yeah, well, you're definitely a bigger man than I am.
Anyway, Von Sanctus's autopsy report says that he dies of suffocation.
We think the murderer overpowered him and choked him with a rope or something.
Well, that hardly sounds like something someone would do during a psychotic episode.
Yeah, the more info I get, the more I think you might be onto something. But either way, that fire the perp started in this room burnt his body. Didn't completely turn it to ash, but it was still pretty charred.
So that fire would have burnt away any evidence of the minor wounds he had.
Yeah, we're lucky we even discerned he was hit with an evocation spell.
Right. The autopsy report mentioned that too. But if a fire was started, is it possible that he died from smoke inhalation?
Nah, the divination spell we use always identifies smoke inhalation as death by poisoning, not death by suffocation.
I suppose that kind of makes sense. But it's still a shame we can't find out how the murderer suffocated him. We still know very little about how the murders occurred. Do you have any records of each of the victim spell compendiums? They might help us understand what each of the victims was doing during the attack.
Sure, knock yourselves out.
Okay, so Garrick had, we've probably seen this before, but Prestidigitation, Conjure Light, Conjure Water, Frostwave, Shape Liquid. Sybil had Slow Fall, which is interesting. Foresight, which is also interesting, like, how did she get surprised if she could have seen what was happening? Strike True, Tech Magic, and Stone Skin. All the things which could have saved her. Meanwhile, Von Sanctus had Mage Blade, Force Cage, Send Message, Mend Wounds. I mean, what I'll do is just kind of... We'll look at those in more detail. Well, let's look at Force Cage, actually. This is a new one. For the duration, the caster creates a 10 by 10 by 10 foot cube around a target within 30 feet of them. The walls of this cube are impenetrable and can't be destroyed by anything, not even by spells that can normally dispel other effects. Furthermore, any attempts to magically teleport in or out the cube will fail. There is more than one creature in the target space that we pushed away from the center of the cube. I mean, it feels like he and Sybil both had spells that could have saved them. So is there a reason why they didn't use them? That's the Slow Fall. Foresight. The caster invokes the ultimate form of divination magic to see brief glimpses of the near future. While this spell is active, the caster is able to sense danger seconds before it actually happens. So again, something that could have saved her life, but didn't. The caster increases their ability to predict the results of all their actions for the duration. This is useful for the purposes of aiming or doing other activities that rely on dexterity and skill. Yeah, so again, stuff that would have been useful for her. Stone Skin, I think, self-explanatory. Okay, wow, that's a lot to work through.
Yeah, this is what happens when a bunch of mages are caught in the middle of a murder. Honestly, you've been lucky until now.
Nevertheless, I'll need to look over each of these spells when they become relevant. Exactly. That's it for Orim for now, so let's have a look at the scene. There's a chalk outline in the centre of the room. This must be where they found Von Sanctus's body. There's even bits of ash there. It must be the burnt fragments of the body. There are scorch marks all over the room. The fire must have spread pretty far.
Yeah, it was probably going for a while. No one even noticed it until Prince Alaric told the Kingsguard that he saw smoke.
Interesting. We should speak with him and see if he saw anything else. Even now, the sunlight is shining through the stained glass windows. It looks like the fire reached them before it was put out. We're obviously going to detect magic as well. There are traces of evocation in a bunch of different spots around the room.
We think the perp threw a bunch of fire-based evocation spells around to start the fire. And the Kingsguard used a bunch of water-based evocation spells to put it out before the fire spread.
Well, that makes sense. With that kind of knowledge in mind, there's nothing out of the ordinary here. What's this white patch, though? There's a trace of abjuration magic in the centre of the room. That's got to be... Oh, abjuration magic has got to be his cube, isn't it? Do the traces overlap with the body? Kind of. It's sort of square-shaped? Square-shaped. I can't see the traces, but there also seems to be a square-shaped outline around the body. You're right. They overlap perfectly. The area inside the square is a lot less burnt now that I look at it. I'm not sure what this means yet, but it's definitely worth taking a note of. Yeah, so that's his force cube thing, isn't it? So let's take a... I want to take a look at that again. Yeah, okay, so you can kind of see the less burnt square around it. Huh. There's some weird stuff going on. I haven't quite got my head around it yet, but let's move on. I guess we should go to the balcony now to see this crime scene. You arrive at the west-facing balcony of the cathedral. Supposedly this is where the murderer threw Sybil's body into the lake. Oh, hello there. Oh, okay, so this is the Hierarchius, or whatever his name was. As you inspect the area, you catch the attention of an old man nearby. From his garb, he appears to be someone who works at the cathedral.
I don't believe we've met before. What are you doing here?
Sorry for the intrusion. I'm Tyrion Cuthbert, and this is my bodyguard, Celeste McCoy.
We're investigating the murders on behalf of Prosecutor Steelwind.
Tyrion Cuthbert. I have heard of you. He doesn't look nearly as criminal as I expected him to be.
Judging from his thoughts, he probably hasn't heard that many good things about you.
But forgive my rudeness, I am Theonarchius, High Speaker of the Church of Bahamut.
So you're the one who saw Steelwind here during the murders. Do you mind if we ask you some questions? He scans you warily.
I suppose there'd be no harm in that.
What did you see? We heard that you saw the prosecutor acting strangely here. Could you tell us more about what you saw? Did it look like she was having a psychotic episode?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but she was certainly acting strangely.
How did you come across her?
Well, I was on my way to the prayer room. I always recite prayers from the draconic texts at around that time.
Wait, he was heading to the prayer room?
When I saw her, I first thought she was just enjoying the view of the lake. I was about to greet her, but when I approached her, I saw that she was throwing something off of the edge of the balcony.
You must have seen her dumping Sybil's body.
You're probably correct. I came to the same conclusion after they found that poor woman's body below us. Although...
What is it?
I only saw it for a second, so perhaps I'm wrong. Lady Sybil was wearing much brighter colours this morning. Whatever Lady Steelwind threw into the lake, it looked much darker.
What does that mean?
I'm sorry, I can't really explain it.
Possibly stone skin, right? That's my guess. So I think both victims, excluding Garrick for the time being, they were using stuff that should have protected them, but didn't. That's probably going to be relevant, but I don't know how.
Perhaps I was just seeing things. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, after all. It could have just been a trick of the light.
I reckon that's what it was. I reckon he had his force cage up. She had her stone skin active, but it didn't help them. And we're going to have to find out why, I reckon. Wait, if you saw Arya dumping Lady Sybil's body, she must have just murdered her. That means you must have been heading to where we were at that time.
Oh? You praying there with Lord Pierce?
Well, not exactly.
What? That's not what the guards told me.
The guards? Do you mean the ones standing watch outside the prayer room?
Yes, they told me that Pierce was praying with some acquaintances of his. They said the same thing to Lady Steelwind as well.
Wait, Steelwind was there too?
Yes, she appeared to be waiting for something. But anyway, I didn't want to disturb them, so I went back to my quarters to pray there.
The High Speaker didn't see her fighting Celeste. She must have started her attack after he left, but why would she bother waiting? Either way, we can't exactly question those guards. Yeah, they're still comatose after the attack. Weirdness going on. It's cool. We're gonna have to figure out quite a big mystery here, I reckon. Actually, the High Speaker's quarters aren't that far away from the prayer room. How did you not hear anything?
Ah, well, it must have been because of the magical wards in my room.
Magical wards? Are they there for security reasons?
Not exactly. I actually suffer from chronic insomnia. Even the smallest sound will wake me up at night. Years ago, I had some mages enchant the walls so sound couldn't travel through them. I can't hear anything from outside the room once I shut my door.
That does sound awfully convenient, but you doubt that he'd lie about something you could so easily verify. Either way, you should make a note of this. Okay, let's examine the scene then. This balcony provides a perfect view of Lake Galacrond. A lot of people probably come here when the Grand Cathedral is open to the public.
I can see a military stronghold in the distance. They must be able to see a lot from that high up. There's some sort of debris on the ground. You pick up one of the pieces and feel it in your hands. It appears to be some kind of gravel, stone skin. Gotta be. Okay, what do we got here? Transmutation, is it going to be? There are traces of transmutation on the pieces of this debris. Well, that would imply that a spell specifically targeted or created whatever this came from. But I doubt someone created these bits of gravel. They must have broken off from something else. Okay, we found everything. Move somewhere else. We'll go to the garden. It wasn't the scene of any crime, but there might be something here. You arrive back at the cathedral garden and come across that accursed statue again. It's staring into my soul. Then stop looking at it!
As you move your attention away from the grotesque sculpture, you spot the Crown Prince. He's sitting on a bench, guarded by some knights from the King's Guard. His brow is furrowed and he seems deep in thought.
Oh, Mr. Cuthbert and Miss McCoy too. What are you still doing here?
Well, we're trying to investigate what happened. We were looking around and we just happened to find you here.
I see.
Are you okay?
Yes, I was just thinking how unfortunate this ordeal has been. I do hope Miss Steelwind is taking this well.
Right, she is his fiancée after all. You must be extremely worried about her. We're trying to find out what exactly happened. Do you mind if we ask you some questions?
I see. Well, I'll do whatever I can to help. You said that you two were investigating the murders. You weren't planning to defend Miss Steelwind, were you?
Well, if she would have me. She may be a competent prosecutor, but I have far more experience defending clients.
Unfortunately, I think the situation is more complicated than that.
What do you mean?
Several house leaders died today. We can't release this information to the public. Not after the news of William Frager's death has already spread.
So there's 4 families, right? So there was Frager, he dead. Sanctus, he's dead. Sybil, she's dead. So the only one left is, what's the other house? It's the axe dude, isn't it? Steelwind's father. He's the only one of the 4 pillar heads of houses that's still alive.
In the course of 2 months, we've lost not 1, but here we go, 3 members of the pillar families.
But the trial has to happen soon, or else the magical traces left will disappear.
From what I've heard, we will be holding a trial, but it will be handled privately and internally. And I'm sorry to say that you won't be permitted to serve in such a trial.
Right, the majority of the nobility hates me after all. You wouldn't be able to pull some strings, would you, Asta?
I'm sorry. I'd like nothing more than to give you the opportunity to represent her. But I clearly have a personal attachment to this case. If I try to tip the trial in her favor, it will only harm her chances more.
Right, I see what you mean. But even if we can't help her during the trial, we can still investigate the crimes on her behalf.
Yes, I would really appreciate that. If new evidence is found, perhaps we can exonerate Miss Steelwind of the charges against her.
After everything that's happened, I really need to know, why were so many nobles gathered in one place anyway? All 4 of the pillar families were present. I understand if you don't want to tell me, but this information could be vital in figuring out what really happened.
No, I see your point. The truth is, we all gathered to mourn the death of my father, King Olivier de Wivengard IX.
Oh, it wasn't a wedding then. Wait, the king is dead?
Yes, we wanted to avoid releasing this information to the public so close to the death of William Frager. My father has been ill for quite some time, so we were prepared for this. Or at least I thought I was. I also lost my mother when I was quite young, but it's still all a little hard to take in.
I'm sorry, you have my condolences.
Thank you.
But if King Olivier is dead, that would make you...
Yes, you currently stand before King Asta de Wivengard, ruler of our kingdom.
Considering everything that's happened, he seems less than thrilled about that. I suppose that explains why all of these nobles were gathered.
They came under the guise of paying their respects. But it's clear they all wanted to get closer to the new King of Wivengard. I think the Fragers were the only ones who genuinely came to give their condolences.
Speaking of the Fragers, I think you need to know. I saw Beatrice before I was knocked out. I think she may have been the one that killed Garrick Pierce. Why would she be there? I'm sorry, I know she's your friend, but we already know she's not above committing murder.
I see. I suppose if you're saying it, it must be so.
But what possible reason would she have to be involved in something like this?
Well, I'm not sure yet, but I plan to find that out. By the way, what were you doing during the murders? I remember you left with Steelwind when Celeste and I arrived at the cathedral.
Ah yes, Steelwind and I left to speak with High Speaker Arceus in his quarters.
What was your meeting about?
It was actually about our wedding. With my father's death, Lord Steelwind wanted to finally make our union official.
Oh! I would congratulate you two, but considering the circumstances...
I understand, and I appreciate your words nonetheless.
Anyway, how long did this meeting last?
I believe we spoke with him until 1:40 p.m.
But Von Sanctus died at 2:05 p.m. That means that she began her rampage less than half an hour after that meeting. Was there anything off about her behavior?
Now that you mention it, something about her demeanor changed. We were speaking of the wedding when she abruptly left. I asked where she was going, but she ignored me.
That sounds similar to what happened when Celeste fought her. There's no way she was affected by Mage Blight. Hypnotized?
I honestly didn't think much of it at the time. I'm quite used to her giving me the cold shoulder.
Right. It's possible that the Steelwind the witnesses saw wasn't actually real. Does that mean the Steelwind that attended the meeting was also a fake? Anyway, what happened after your meeting with the High Speaker? Did you see Steelwind after that?
Actually, I found myself caught up in something else entirely. At 2 p.m. I went to pay my respects at my father's coffin. But apparently someone had set a magical trap there.
What?
It was a glyph of contingency.
Okay, so let's read about this. When casting this spell, the caster must choose another spell they know. The caster casts that spell, but the contingent spell doesn't come into effect. Instead, it takes effect when a certain condition, specified by the caster, is fulfilled. The contingent spell takes effect immediately when that condition is fulfilled. Okay. I have heard of that spell. It's like a trap you can set and infuse any spell into it, but it requires a second contingent spell to place that trap. Which spell was it?
It was a force cage targeting me.
Was the murderer trying to attack Asta too? I don't think so. They would have used a more lethal spell if they wanted to. From the sounds of it, force cage can't be dispelled, so Asta would have been trapped inside it for that full hour.
We think the murderer used this as a distraction. Because of that trap, the Kingsguard consolidated most of their attention and forces on my location. As a result, there were fewer people guarding Von Sanctus, Sybil and Pierce. And the ones that were there all fell comatose. They can't tell us what happened to them.
And yet another inexplicable event is added to the list. After everything you've learned, you highly doubt that Steelwind was affected by Mage Blight, so someone must be behind what happened. But who? Anyway, seems like he's told you everything he knows. He probably didn't witness much after he was trapped by that force cage. Let's go somewhere else. Let's also examine this scene. Detect magic.
Arcanum.
Nothing. Look at the statue. What goes through the mind of such a tortured creature? What is with you and this statue? I don't know, but I can feel its emotions as if they were my own. It's an inanimate object, Tyrion. Okay. So I think the only place left to move now is the dungeon. Go and speak with Steelwind. You arrive at the dungeon to speak with Steelwind. You can't find her anywhere. The Inquisition and the Kingsguard must still be processing her. You should come back later. Oh, alright. Guess we'll go back to the nave? She attacked a member of the royal family and killed several nobles. What else is there to investigate? The laws are clear about what we must do. We should execute her immediately.
Alaric, the situation is of far too much import to make such rash decisions. We need to approach this calmly and carefully.
As you return to the nave, you spot the young prince in an argument with that nobleman you saw earlier. Now that you think of it, you still have no idea who he is. Oh, it's you two. Your Highness? I don't think we've been introduced. What? I see you're still as insolvent as ever. I think he means insolent. You stand before Sir Remus Virgili, Archduke and Royal Visor to the Wivengard throne.
I believe he means advisor.
Remus Virgili. Archduke? Didn't even know the Kingdom of Wivengard had a title like that. Why haven't you ever heard of him before?
Why are you two still here, anyway? I thought the cathedral was closed for the investigation.
We're investigating what happened on behalf of Prosecutor Steelwind.
I see. Anyway, I have much to attend to. I'll be taking my leave.
You sense a tinge of anxiety. Is he avoiding you? Actually, since we have you here, we have some questions. To both of you.
You should know your place, knave.
Your Grace, where were you when the murders took place?
Just what are you trying to insinuate?
Please, Alaric, there's no need for that. To answer your question, I was speaking with Lady Frega's familiar.
Tracker?
No, it was the demon who calls himself Maranath.
What? Why would you want to speak with him?
He was actually the one that sent for me. According to him, he had some information that was of great import to me.
You didn't make a contract with him, did you?
Of course not. What kind of desperate fool do you take me for? No, he gave me the information he had freely.
But why would he do that? Demons are supposedly always trying to trick humans into making deals with them.
Looking back, it must have been a distraction. What a fool I was. I knew he was playing with me. But I knew he couldn't tell lies, and the information he had was too important to ignore. If you don't mind me
asking, what was the information about?
I'm sorry, but I can't reveal what he told me. It could endanger people that I care about. But rest assured, I doubt it has anything to do with the massacre.
Your Grace, we've only just met. I can't exactly take your word for it.
I suppose that's fair. But believe me when I say that I plan to take this information to my grave.
That's ominous. But he's clearly intent on keeping their conversation secret.
Anyway, several members of the King's Guard were watching us. They can verify my alibi.
How long did this conversation last?
I arrived to speak with him at 1:50 p.m. and then didn't leave until 3:10 p.m.
So coincidentally, that's the entire period of the murders and everything else. So he was accounted for during the time frame of the murders. But why would Maranath go to the trouble of distracting him in the first place? Whoever orchestrated this also used a force cage to trap Asta. Were they trying to distract the forces in the cathedral? Or were they trying to keep certain people out of the crossfire? Either way, it's clear that Beatrice has a lot to answer for. Your Highness, we heard the prosecutor cast a spell on you when you saw the fire in the common room. Can you tell us more about what happened?
I can't believe she attacked a member of the royal family. She was completely irresponsible with her magic.
I understand your feelings about this, but we can't say for certain that she inflicted mage blight on herself. We don't even know if it was actually her.
I saw her with my own eyes. Plenty of other people did too.
Either way, where did this happen?
It was on the path outside the common room. I saw smoke coming from the building, and I saw Steelwind walking away from it.
So this must have been after she murdered Von Sanctus. I have a feeling I already know the answer, but was she behaving erratically?
No, she very deliberately cast a spell on me.
Which once again implies that Mage Blight wasn't behind this. Do you know which spell she cast on you?
I'm not sure. I've never been affected by a spell like that before.
From the magical traces on him, we know that it was a transmutation spell.
Transmutation spells multiply, manipulate, and change physical matter. It's scary to think about what that might do to a human body. Are you sure he's okay?
Lord Asclepius has inspected him, and he doesn't appear to have any lasting injuries. We're hoping that the spell's effects were only temporary.
Can you describe what you felt while you were affected by it? That might help us identify which spell it was.
Well, I was extremely dazed and my ears were ringing. My vision was also partially blurred, as if my mind was in some sort of fog. Whenever I tried to speak, I couldn't even form words with my mouth. I could only make grunting sounds. I couldn't walk either, so I had to crawl on the floor.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That must have been traumatic. But what kind of transmutation spell would do that to him? It had to be something that affected his senses. You already told us that she wasn't acting erratically, but was there anything off about her demeanour?
I only saw her for a moment, but she was definitely different than usual. She was completely emotionless.
Yeah, that's exactly what she was like when I fought her, too.
It's like she was an arcane construct. Her movements were almost robotic.
Wait, are there any arcane constructs on the cathedral grounds?
No, not for lack of trying on Lord Von Sanctus's part. The High Speaker and I have specifically forbidden the staff here from using them.
It would be really convenient if all of this was done using a construct. Although you are a little tired of seeing them in your cases. Anyway, was anyone else around when Steelwind cast that transmutation spell on you?
No, she moved away quickly after she incapacitated me. And even if someone was around, I don't think I could have seen them anyway.
Commander White also said that he was surprised no one saw the prince until after that spell wore off. What happened to him? Maybe that's the feigned death spell? Could have been. That covers Alaric's account of what happened, and we even got the Archduke's statement too, but there's still one last person we need to speak to.
Arya.
She and Beatrice supposedly have no memories of what happened. If it were only Beatrice saying that, I'd probably doubt it, but if Steelwind also doesn't have any memories, it becomes a lot more credible. She definitely has the missing piece we need to put this together.
Are you going to the dungeon to speak with her?
I am.
Wonderful. I'll be accompanying you.
What?
As the royal advisor, I have a vested interest in the investigation. While I trust Lucio to leave no stone unturned, I hear you have quite the talent for seeing what the crown cannot.
Well, it's not as if you have the authority to stop him, but you still don't know him very well. You'll need to be wary of what you say in front of him. I just want to look at other spells we know of, and see if there's anything we can think that might have affected the prince. That's necromancy, it's not transmutation. I don't think there's anything on my list that would necessarily do that. So I don't know. Yeah, I didn't mean to talk to him about that. Okay, so we're gonna go to the dungeon anyway. You arrive at the dungeon and see the prosecutor sitting in a holding cell. She seems extremely stressed. It's as if she's trying to figure something out.
Mr. Cuthbert, and your grace.
Steelwind gives a wary look to the Archduke.
How are you doing? As best as I can, all things considered. What brings you here?
We're trying to investigate everything that happened.
I see.
I was wondering if you could answer some of our questions. Steelwind, I know your situation is pretty grim right now, but you know you can trust me.
You're not the person I'm worried about. At this moment, I don't even know if I can trust myself.
What? We heard that you don't have any memories of what happened. Is that true?
It is. No matter how much I try, I cannot recall anything.
What is the last thing you remember?
I believe I was leaving my meeting with the High Speaker and His Majesty. After the meeting, I was planning to return to the nave to speak with my father. I suddenly felt extremely nauseous. I thought some fresh air might help me feel better, so I went on the balcony.
The one over Lake Galacron?
Yeah, that one. The last thing I remember was losing consciousness as I looked at the lake.
And did you cast any magic before this happened?
No, I didn't.
You sure you don't remember anything after that?
I don't. All I remember is waking up to the sound of someone sobbing. It was Celeste. She was crying over your unconscious body, Mr. Cuthbert.
I feel like we've completely ruled out Mage Blight, so I doubt that's why you can't remember anything. Are there any spells that can specifically modify or destroy people's memories? It would certainly explain a lot of this.
No, arcane spells can only affect the physical world. But throughout history, mages have attempted to develop spells that can affect the mind. There's no recorded history of any of them succeeding.
But you're assuming that arcane spells are the only type of magic that exists.
What?
I think you've observed it already. There are magical creatures in this world that don't use arcane magic. Isn't that right, Mr. Cuthbert?
What? Does he know about the Eye of Horus? I'm not sure what you're trying to imply.
Don't take me for a fool. Several of my associates attended Freyga's trial, and they all heard what that demon referred to you as. Heavensborn, if I learned that Lumina had anything to do with this...
Your Grace, I'm not an agent of the Theocracy. And even if what you're saying is true, I wasn't the one who manipulated Steelwind's memories. But I suppose you raise a good point. If something affected Steelwind's memories, it wasn't necessarily an arcane spell. In fact, it couldn't have been an arcane spell. It was definitely something else.
You're probably right. Which proves that I'm responsible for the murders.
What? You just said that you don't have any memories of what happened. Why are you so convinced that you're responsible for this? I told the Inquisition already I saw Beatrice before I passed out. She's clearly involved in this somehow.
There's something more to this than you realise, Mr. Cuthbert. For the past few months, the Inquisition and I have been investigating a string of seemingly unrelated murders. During each of those cases, we were able to apprehend the perpetrator without issue. There's always something off about them during questioning. The murders were always abnormally gruesome and passionate, and each of the perpetrators said the same thing. They all said that they had no choice.
No choice?
Cases like this have been occurring throughout Wyverngard, and very little connects the perpetrators to each other. All except one thing. Each of them acted as if someone had controlled them against their will.
They were probably just desperate. Most murderers try to make excuses after they've caught. They could even just be in complete denial.
Orim said the same thing, but these cases were far too similar for me to ignore. I wondered if they were telling the truth. Perhaps each of these murders was committed by an unknown party. I didn't have any concrete evidence, but I knew I was getting closer to something.
Steelwind, I don't mean to be rude, but this sounds...
completely insane.
Well, you don't even have any physical evidence to prove these murders are connected.
There's one piece of evidence, but it's hardly concrete. But it does tie each of these cases together.
She takes out a small parchment from her pocket and shows it to you. It's a purple symbol.
Several of these people we arrested had an item with this symbol on it. None of them could remember where it came from or even what it was. But they all somehow knew that it was called the Purple Mark.
But there has to be an explanation for this. It could just be some esoteric superstition that we don't know about.
If that's true, then ask yourself one thing. Where did I get this parchment from?
You don't mean...
I found it in my pocket after I was properly confined. Whoever I've been chasing must have left it there to taunt me. For all I know, they could have controlled my body and forced me to draw this symbol myself. Either way, this all but proves the massacre at the cathedral is related to it.
Okay. Interesting. I don't want to dismiss what you said, but this definitely won't hold up in court.
Nor should it. If my mind is being compromised, I can't take the risk of leaving this dungeon. Otherwise, I could end up harming more people.
Wait, are you planning to spend the rest of your life in prison?
If that is what is necessary to keep everyone safe.
What about Aster? Weren't you two supposed to be married soon? He's the king now, and you can't rule Wyverngard alongside him from a holding cell.
You're correct, but he's always been a remarkable person. He should have no problem fighting another suitress.
You feel an overwhelming sadness emanating from her as she says that.
Arya.
No.
What?
You're not going to sacrifice everything for someone else's actions.
Mr. Cuthbert, I'm not going to risk more lives. If I would hurt His Majesty, I'd never be able to forgive myself. Please don't ask that of me.
Do we argue now? I suppose we do. There's no evidence here, is there? Steelwind is going to throw away everything she cares about for the greater good. Even if she was the one who did all this, she's not the one who's responsible. You can't let her resign herself to a fate like this.
Argument.
Steelwind, are you seriously just going to throw your life away?
If it were necessary, I'd give my life for the kingdom. If someone controlled my actions today, they can and will do so again.
A villain controlled by mind.
And as long as that possibility exists, I can't trust myself.
Okay, let's have a look at her profile. She acts for the greater good of the kingdom, regardless of the amount of suffering she must endure in doing so. Deeply in love with Aster, and will do anything to protect him. Still rational, and will be receptive to logical arguments. Let's try deflecting. That's not the issue here. If someone else is responsible for what happened, then we need to find out who they are. They could still be out there.
If that's true, you're fully capable of finding that out yourself. As I've said, I've no memories of what happened. I'm sure one day you'll be able to find out what happened.
She'll have already lost everything by then. Okay, well, I guess doubt then. But that's assuming this person can continue to do so. You said so yourself.
you haven't found any evidence to prove your theory. We don't know how this mind control works, and we don't have enough information. We can't just drop this without finding out what really happened.
I suppose you're right, but I doubt there was any goal to this.
The person responsible was just a sadistic killer.
I've been investigating these murders for months, and I've never been able to find any personal clues as to who the perpetrator is. There's no way to connect them to this. Whoever did this was a sadistic individual who wanted to cause as much suffering as possible.
Just a sadistic killer. Is it the...
What is this?
The perpetrator wasn't nearly as aimless as you think, and this proves it.
My apologies, Mr. Cuthbert, but I don't really see how that proves your claim.
Oh. Okay. Sadistic killer. Is it the route they took? Yeah, it wasn't sadistic, there was purpose to it. Oh. Okay, what about the route he took? No? I'm running out of chances here. What proves that he's not sadistic? Oh, because the knights were put asleep. Oh! Did we do it again? Okay, we'll try that again. I mean, I thought I put forward several arguments there that prove he's not just a sadistic killer. But... I don't know, none of that seemed to be the right thing. At least it's not game over when you lose the arguments, so... Cause as much suffering as possible. Was it the force cage thing that Asta was put into? That's not true, Steelwind. Whoever did this had very specific targets in mind. Both Prince Alaric and the High Speaker saw you when the murders were being committed. Not to mention, they set a trap for Asta. What? Let's assume that someone was controlling you. They wouldn't have left Alaric, Arceus, or Asta alive if they were trying to kill as many people as possible. Maybe they only targeted people whose name begins with A. or don't target anyone whose name begins with A.
I suppose you have a point there. But even so, that hardly narrows things down. If someone was controlling me, they wouldn't need to enter the cathedral to use me. Perhaps you're right, and the perpetrator only wanted to murder the 3 victims. There's plenty of people who might want to see those 3 dead.
The perpetrator didn't need to enter the cathedral to commit the murders. Perpetrator didn't need to enter the cathedral to commit the murders. What does that mean? Yeah, they were there for the funeral. There's one thing you're overlooking. Before the murders started, someone trapped Asta with a force cage using Glyph of Contingency.
But they didn't harm him, it was probably just a distraction.
Even so, this gives us 2 very important clues. The first is that whoever did this is capable of casting those 2 spells. This means that the perpetrator was a mage.
That's true.
But the second clue is the most important one. Whoever set that trap for Asta, they did so within 24 hours of it triggering.
This means that the perpetrator must have been someone who attended the funeral.
So who's one of them?
Well, that narrows down our list of suspects substantially. There's a chance we can identify who did this, and if they really did control your actions, we can find a way to prevent them from doing so again. Steelwind, you need to fight this.
I can't.
What? Why not? Fighting this will put people in danger.
If we pursue an individual like this, they might retaliate even more than they already have. They wanted to remove me from my position. How will they react if I try to resist? They might hurt even more people to send a message. It's far too dangerous.
How about suggest the king could be in danger? Whoever did this had a goal far bigger than you, and you have no guarantee that they'll stop here. 3 nobles died today, and 2 of them were near the top of the political hierarchy. What if they decide to go after more victims? Who will they target next? Your father? The king? We need to catch them before they can do more harm. I know you're frightened about what might happen to the people close to you, but we can't let someone that dangerous get away with this.
When you put it that way, I suppose I've got no other choice, do I? I never realised it before, Mr. Cuthbert.
What?
You really have a bad habit of butting your nose into other people's business, don't you?
Yeah, I suppose I do.
But you're right. We can't let this go. I'll find a way to dispute this somehow. Thank you, Mr. Cuthbert.
I think we've known each other long enough. You don't need to be so formal. You've successfully argued against Arya Steelwind. Perhaps I misjudged you.
I know I agree to fight this, but...
What is it?
You're
You're the most qualified attorney in the nobility. You'll definitely be able to make a case for yourself.
As you probably know, House Sybil controls the legislative and judicial branches of our kingdom. And they've nominated my father as the prosecutor for my trial.
What?
No one believes my theory of mind control. Everyone believes that I overspent my magic and gave myself mage blight. As a result, they blame House Steelwind for Caroline Sybil's death. Nah, the only way for him to redeem House Steelwind is to convict me and sentence me to death. But he's your father. There's no way he would. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. When I was a child, my mother accidentally overused her magic and induced mage blight within herself. In her resultant psychotic episode, she massacred an entire village of commoners.
No.
House Steelwind almost lost everything after that. To redeem himself, my father personally oversaw my mother's trial and her execution. My father values his duty to Wyvern over everything else. Nothing matters more to him than that, not even his family. I want to have confidence in myself, but I don't know if I can face him like this.
Mr. Cuthbert, what is your stake in all of this?
What?
You hate the nobility, don't you? So why are you so intent on helping this Steelwind?
Well, because she's innocent. I know she is. She would never be irresponsible enough to give herself mage blight.
Mr. Cuthbert.
It doesn't matter if she's a noble or a commoner. She's being oppressed by the system and she deserves a fair trial.
Well said.
What?
I, Remus Virgili, hereby grant you the privilege to serve as Miss Steelwind's counsel.
Wait, really?
I will be acting as the judge and arbiter of Miss Steelwind's trial. It is within my right to grant such permissions.
Thank you. But why would you...
Do you think I've made a mistake?
No, of course not. I'll serve as Steelwind's attorney. If she will have me.
Of course, there's no one else I would trust more with this. And please, you've done a lot for me already. You don't have to be so formal. Please call me by my first name. Celeste's already taken to doing that. But since you'll be defending me, you'll probably need this.
Her spell compendium. So she's got Mend Wounds, Firebolt, Shape Liquid, Dispel Magic, Steelwind Strike, Detect Magic, Polymorph, and Hold Creature. Okay. Firebolt's pretty self-explanatory. Hold Creature, hold a target still. Steelwind Strike. The caster strikes targets their choice within a 40-foot radius and a slashing force. Each slash has the might and power of Mage Blade and can cut through thick metal armor. It's the ultimate spell of House Steelwind, and its spell formula is a closely guarded secret. Yikes. Polymorph. Okay.
Oh, this is probably what hit Alaric. She turned him into something. Remember, he couldn't talk. He could only sort of croak or something. It wasn't necessarily a frog. He said he could only crawl. His mind was foggy. So his intellect was changed to match that of the animal. No one saw him. So what if he was turned into, like, I don't know, like a snail or a worm or slug or something like that? That's an interesting idea. Dispel magic. Okay.
Then it's settled. We will hold the trial at my home, the city of Ladon.
Ladon? I've never heard of that place.
Speak with Lucio. He knows the location well.
Before you can ask any more questions, the Archduke leaves without a word. He really has a bad habit of just walking away from conversations. But I guess we should consider ourselves lucky. Even if it's unorthodox, the situation will let us approach this like any other trial. You had no idea what you were in for when you agreed to this. And what proceeded next would be unlike any trial you've ever been in. But even so, you persevered as you've always done in the name of justice, regardless of what you'd have to sacrifice to do so. We will save our progress, but we're also going to leave it there for now. It sounds like we're going to be heading into the first phase of the trial. I don't know what pattern it will follow, but in previous trials we've had initial phase and then a secondary investigation phase and then another trial phase. Maybe it'll be similar here. Maybe it won't. The case 4 seemed to throw a few spanners into the works in terms of structure. But yeah, we'll definitely leave it here for now. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you could hit that thumbs up button, that'd be appreciated. Leave me comments as well. Let me know your theories. I mean, I think I've identified theories as to kind of what happened with a lot of the people that had spells cast on them. I think it fits. I don't know who was responsible, B, what they were doing to Steelwind, or why. You know, there's a lot of questions still unanswered, so if anyone has any, initial theories as to any of that, do let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this and haven't yet subscribed to the channel, it would be amazing if you could do so. So thanks very much, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.